Welcome to the Sort of Sure podcast, where doubt looms, fear whispers, and the only way forward is through. I'm Samar Carbo, and if you've ever felt like you're just sort of sure about what you're doing, you're not alone. This is where we face the uncertainty, push past the hesitation, and keep going anyway. So take a breath, step in, and let's move forward together.
Hello, and welcome to the Sort of Sure podcast. I am Samar Carbo, as you probably heard in the opening, and I am going to bring you a conversation today, once again, about self-doubt, about imposter syndrome, and about a story of a woman who just wouldn't quit. Today you're going to hear from Cindy Witteman. She is an executive director of a nonprofit. She is the owner of a magazine. She is an all-around awesome person who is a multiple award-winning and best-selling author and lovely to have a conversation with. But you're going to hear a person who's further along their journey, so I need you as people to hear this, that this is a person who's been through some tough times. And remember that what you're hearing is a person on the other side of a whole lot of work. She makes it sound easy because she's used to talking about it. To provide you with a new perspective, just to see it the way I do, I hear the pain that she's gone through and the desperation that she feels while doing her level best to prevent anyone else from feeling the despair in her life moving on. So I want you to listen to this and have yourself a listen with that perspective.
My name is Cindy Witteman. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. I'm the founder and CEO of Driving Single Parents, which is a nonprofit where we give away cars to single parents in need. Also the founder and editor-in-chief of Force Magazine, host of Little Give TV show. I'm a 5-time best-selling author, and I've got a pretty large family.
Seeing all of these things that you mentioned, you've got the magazine, you've got the TV show, you've got your nonprofit, and you're an author. That's a lot of things. Do you just like to stay busy, or do these things come along naturally?
Yeah, so yes and yes. I actually had found out when I started the nonprofit that I had fear of public speaking. And so one day after, years down the road, I said, you know what, this fear of public speaking is really holding me back from getting my message out to the masses, right? I really need to get over this. So I made a commitment to myself that I was just going to start saying yes to opportunities. And by starting to say yes, opportunities really just started to pour in. In fact, that first book deal came 3 weeks after I made that commitment to myself. And very short after, I ended up with another one. And then the TV show was asked of me to host. So
now the TV show, that's one you don't run across every day. How'd that get to you?
Yeah, well, again, same thing. I got that first book and then the second one, and then they asked me if I would be willing to host a TV show. And of course, with my fear of, self-sabotage and my fear of, being seen, and all the things that I have from some trauma I faced in the past, I said, absolutely not. You got to be out of your ever-loving mind. There's no way. I don't know anything about TV. I don't like to be on camera. And I definitely do not want to be looked at by millions of people. It ain't going to happen. But then that sneaky thing came back where I was like, Cindy, you made a commitment to yourself. You're going to start saying yes. This is an opportunity for you to showcase your nonprofit and everything else you're trying to create change for good in the world. So you got to think about it. So I started to think about it, and I told them, of course, no. And then they said, well, what if we let you pick the name of your show? What if we let you pick the layout? What if we let you pick the mission? What if we let you pick your guests? Would you do it then? Well, with all the barriers being removed and that sneaky little commitment I made to myself, I ended up saying yes. And now 2 years later, I've been the host of Little Give TV show, and we just highlight ordinary people doing extraordinary things to help others. So just another opportunity that presented itself by simply being willing to be open to opportunity.
On this TV show, I'm getting the sort of like John Krasinski, some good news vibes. Is that what you were going for? Or it just kind of is good and is positive for people in general? So that's where I'm getting that.
Yeah, I was really going for that. I wanted to spread good news. I feel like there's so much bad news out there. Of course, bad news sells. And so when I thought about what would make it worth it for me to get in front of that camera and do it afraid week after week, I thought, man, if I could spread good news and kindness and showcase all the amazing people that are in this world, obviously our world's not perfect, but there's a lot of really great people out there doing amazing things to try to make it better. And I thought, man, it'd make it worth it for me to shine a light on those great people. And so that's how I ended up in figuring out to choose the name Little Give, to show people that the little things that you do really add up to that ripple effect of kindness and those big gifts all together.
Yeah, that little quote from Aesop is so powerful. But you've mentioned a couple of times some trauma that you had, and you also use that kind of 10-cent word, that self-sabotage, that I'm sure if they're listening to this show, my audience is familiar with. But would you like to talk about a little bit of that? A little bit of what sort of was dragging you back before?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I grew up super poor. I grew up, I had a single mom raise me, and although my dad is one of my best friends now, he was off, and I was with my mom most of the time. She had primary custody of me, and my mom was amazing and a loving person, but she was terrible with money. So we often got evicted, and we went without food and running water sometimes, and had to rely on the kindness of a lot of other people often to be able to get our basic needs met. And so that was already a struggle growing up. Well, as I got into my teen years, I said, you know what? I know how to fix this. I'm going to get married and start my own white picket fence, and I could do a way better job than her. And so that's what I did. Early in my teens, ended up getting married, and sadly, it ended up being a very abusive relationship. And so I suffered a lot of trauma in there. And, as I mentioned, my mom was terrible with money, but she was so loving. I never experienced violence in the home or any of those things. So when this started to happen to me, with me making that commitment to myself that this was going to be forever and I was going to give my kids that 2-parent home, I decided to just swallow it and do everything that I could to make it work. And I just felt like, I could do this. I could shoulder all of this pain. No problem. I got this. And because my daughters were not being physically abused, I felt like I should stay and stick it out and make it work no matter what. Stick with my commitment. And so one day I was watching Dr. Phil, and Dr. Phil said, it's better to come from a broken home than it is to grow up in one. And I don't know what it was. It felt like he was talking to me in that moment, like directly to me. And I was like, whoa, it hit me that although I thought I was doing the right thing by my daughters by creating this happy family and this 2-parent home and all the things I didn't have and stability, I realized that I was actually dragging them through a bunch of trauma, and that I was actually teaching them it's okay to be treated like that. So I stood up in that moment. I got a basket of clothes, a bag of diapers, and we left that situation, and I built a new life for us. I worked 2 jobs for myself through college. And
so what was your timeline there? So you obviously you didn't walk out of there and into the Little Give studio. Was there a long time between all of these things? I mean, you went to college, did all these amazing things.
Yeah, there was a timeline between there. It took me a while to kind of find my footing, and of course to because I left that situation knowing that I was going to drag my daughter through single parenthood journey, I committed to myself that I was not going to be what my ex used to tell me all the time was like, you're going to be on food stamps and welfare, you're going to be a loser like your mama, the girls are not going to have anything, all those things, that precondition that happens whenever you're in an abusive relationship. I promised myself that I was never going to do that. I was going to take care of what I had control over, and I was going to make sure that I gave my daughters something to be proud of. And so it did take me some time to get my footing and get myself into a place and finish school, and then get myself in a position to where I could do a better life or make a better life for us as a family. So there was some time in between there, but it was 8 years ago when I started my nonprofit, Driving Single Parents, where we give away cars.
And through all of that, you were like, there's a rocket attached to you, just to the moon you were headed.
Well, I had to overcome a lot of fear and self-doubt and self-sabotage and imposter syndrome and a lot of things that for a long time I feel like held me back, but I pushed myself to do it anyways. And that commitment I made to my daughters that I was going to make them proud and I was going to break the chains. Back when I was a kid, when I was living with my mom, there was a song that came out, and it was by Travis Tritt, and it was a song called I'm Gonna Be Somebody One Day. And one of the lyrics in that song was, I'm going to be somebody one day. One of these days I'm going to break these chains. And that was something that was like a driving force for me throughout my life, was like, one of these days I'm going to break these chains of, generational poverty. One of these days I'm going to break these chains of cycles of abuse that has been suffered. One of these days I'm going to break these chains. And I feel like sitting here today, the Cindy that I am, I've done a pretty good job at breaking some of those chains so that my daughters can see what success looks like and can see what it is to be a good person. Because that's the primary concern, is like, how can we be good people and try to make a better tomorrow for the entire world, not just ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. I love hearing that. And as I'm hearing you talk, I guess I start to wonder, is there anything you can't do?
I don't think I'm ever going to be an NFL player.
You don't have the height requirement, is that it?
Yeah, my muscle tone is a little weak.
You seem to almost, from the way you describe it, and of course, anybody who achieves at a high level is assumed a superhero. But is there a trick or a habit that you have in place, where you sort of get some help from yourself, your past self, or your routine in quieting the voice of that imposter syndrome when it comes up?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the driving mantras I have is like, if it's to be, it's up to me. And I've never put myself, since I left that abusive relationship, in a situation to where it was up to somebody else to dictate my happiness. It was up to somebody else to measure my success. I've made it my mission to, if it's to be, it's up to me. And if I want an opportunity and I can't find that opportunity, I will create it. That's
the best. And along those lines, you do seem very action-oriented. So when you mentioned the self-sabotage, are you, say if you're feeling those self-sabotage type feelings, you're in the throes of imposter syndrome, it doesn't, maybe not so much today, but at one point you didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Was that a get moving, burn it all down kind of imposter syndrome, or was it quieter for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been both. I mean, I want to say that even today where I stand, it never goes away. That sneaky little, sabotage and imposter syndrome, all that, it doesn't go away. And that's one thing that I used to look at other people and be like, man, I can't wait till I can be confident myself like they are. But now I realize that nobody's 100% confident all the time. Nobody has a great day every day. And everybody has the ability to end up in the sewer cycle where you're just thinking one negative thought after another after another. I think the power that I've found is how to change the channel in my mind. Whether it be that I'm all of a sudden I have this negative thought and I start to catch myself going in that sewer cycle, whether it be that I read a book or I call a friend or I put on positive music or I put my focus on something else or I journal or I write. I mean, I want to be very clear that it never goes away. It's a matter of finding out what works for you and your brain to kind of change that channel in your mind to get you off to something more positive, because negative thoughts compound, and when you have one, you'll have another and another. Before you know it, your whole mind is full of all the negative thoughts, and that doesn't get anybody anywhere.
So what's one piece of advice that you would have for someone who's struggling with imposter syndrome, or to prevent them from struggling with it?
I love Think in Ink. I think in ink all the time. And it's something about that switch where you write down your thoughts. And I've really found that if I'm struggling with something or I'm starting to feel like I'm not good enough or who am I? And that happens to me to this day. I'm like, who am I to be having my own magazine? I don't even like to read. How am I a best-selling author? I don't even like to read. I've always struggled with these things. Like, who am I? So even to this day, and it's a matter of me sitting down and thinking in ink and writing out, why do I feel this way? What do I expect of myself? And what would I tell somebody who's in my situation? And so oftentimes I'll tell people, you got to get real clear with yourself. And a lot of times we're our own worst critics, like I'm sure you've heard that 1,000 times before. And whatever it is that you think is going to go wrong, it couldn't be as bad as what you're thinking is going to go wrong. So if you sit down and you put a line down the middle of the paper, and on the left side you write down what you want to do, and on the right side you write all the things that can go wrong, usually you'll quickly understand that you can deal with all the things that could possibly go wrong. Because what's worse is regretting the fact that you never tried.
Is that something that you instill in your daughters? Or are you're holding off waiting to see if they develop it first?
Absolutely. I talk to my daughters about these things all the time, and I explain to them that nobody's perfect. One of my books, my solo book that I wrote by myself was Beyond the Smile. And that's one of the things I really wanted to show my daughters and all people is that there's always something going on beyond that smile. And it's really important because now with social media and everything, I have young daughters, I have older daughters, I have teens right now, I have younger daughters than teens, and I have 5 grandkids. And so it's really important for people to understand that whenever you're looking on social media, you're looking at Facebook and Instagram and you're seeing everybody having their best day and they're at the beach and they're traveling to other countries, that those people have something going on beyond the smile too. And every day is not their great day. They are showing you what is great that day. And it's really important for all of us to understand that everybody is human just like us. And no matter how much money you make, and no matter where you are in your life, and no matter how accomplished you look on Facebook or Instagram or on paper, everybody has something going on beyond the smile. And I think it's easy for teens and young women, men, everybody, even adults, to get really caught up in the cycle of thinking everybody else has it figured out. What's wrong with me? And I think that we've got to dispel that. So I talk to my kids all the time about self-sabotage, about how to be confident, about how to take care of you. And anytime that you're in doubt, take action no matter what it is. No matter what action you take, do something. There's nothing worse than just being stagnant. So to do something. So yes, I talk to my kids about it all the time.
That's great. And I in preparing for this interview, I did check that out, and I love that. And so many times, and I hear you talk about it now, and you mentioned it earlier too, that you had these almost automatic negative thoughts that you kept throwing at yourself, of course, before the manifesting came in. And it sounds like you decided these were lies at a certain point. Like you're gonna end up like your mother, you're gonna be a loser, these sorts of things that are lies. How did you find out? Or did you just always know and you only took them on in low points?
I didn't always know. But I did know that I was willing to commit to being better than what I was expected to be. If that makes sense, where I felt like my potential was kind of capped. Like, yeah, well, if I just did a little better than my mom or whatever. I always felt like that was it for me. And so, but I was determined to be more than that. And I was determined to show my daughters that you can, whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're right. That's a famous quote by Henry Ford. And so I would always tell myself, like, if I think I can, I can. If I think I can't, I can't. Either way, I'm going to be right. So which one's it going to be? And I'm like, I can. And so then I just slowly but surely pushed myself into creating whatever opportunities I wanted and doing those things. But I will tell you, it took me a while to really get out of that sewer cycle. My brain would just continuously, go off into the negative, and I would try to pull it back, and it would go again, and I'd try to pull it back and rethink it and try a new way and try to make myself think something positive. And I had a really hard time with that for a while, but I ended up doing this trick, which is not for everyone, but it worked for me. I just, for some reason, was like, I'm going to try to do something that will trigger my brain to realize bad thoughts are bad. So I put a simple office rubber band on my wrist. And every time I caught myself going off into that negative thought pattern, I would just snap that rubber band. And let me tell you, my brain is a very fast learner, I learned. Because really quickly, my brain realized, hey, something negative is going to happen if I go in that direction. And then now my brain is trained out more often than not to go to the positive. And so it just worked for me. So with the magazine, I actually ended up having somebody come up to me and they said, what's next for you? And at first I was kind of upset because I was like, what do you mean what's first for me? Or what's next for me? I've already done this, this, and this. Like, how much more can one person do? So every night before bed, I wrote down on a little 3x5 card, what's next for you? I did that for 3 days in a row. And on the third night, I had this dream that I had my own magazine. And it was called Force. And it was going to highlight people who are a force to be reckoned with. So the next morning I woke up, I wrote it all down, and I called my publicist, and I said, by any chance, can y'all help me do a magazine? And they said, yeah, I think we can do that. So ever since then, I've had the magazine, and we're now celebrating our 1-year anniversary of Force Magazine, where we highlight people from around the world who are doing good. I realized in my journey with the TV show and everything else that with the TV show, I could highlight 4 amazing people a month. With the magazine, I could highlight 40 amazing people a month. So it really made a light, a brighter light on those amazing people out there who are doing great things to spread good news. And so that is my story of manifesting my amazing magazine that really is doing incredible and highlighting some amazing people.
So great. And I'll include a link to the magazine's website in the show notes. Truly wonderful speaking with you today, Cindy. Thank you so much for being on the Sort of Sure podcast.
Thank you. All right. We'll talk soon. I really appreciate you. All right.
Bye now. Alrighty, folks, once again, that is a wrap for this episode of the Sort of Sure podcast. If today's conversation got you thinking, don't stop here. Grab my free one-page masterclass to start tackling imposter syndrome with clarity and confidence today. You can find it linked in the show notes. And hey, I'd love to hear your story. If you've got a personal experience with imposter syndrome, whether you've battled it, still wrestling with it, or had a breakthrough, send me an email at sortofsharepod@gmail.com. Your story might just help someone else take the next step on their journey. Until next time, keep showing up, even when you're sort of sure. Later days.